To kick off the seminar, as Ms. Koike Yuriko, Governor of Tokyo, will deliver the opening remarks. She will deliver her greeting in her role as a conference organizer via video message.
Good evening, everyone, and hello to everyone participating from the UK. I'm Koike Yuriko, Governor of Tokyo. Today marks the opening of Tokyo's Sustainable Finance Week. I'm very pleased that the 7th edition of the Green Finance Seminar, co-hosted by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, the City of London Corporation, and the British Embassy, Tokyo, is being held on this first day. With the world confronting serious risks such as climate change, natural disasters, and the energy crisis, the theme shared by all of humanity is the creation of sustainable cities. I have been actively working to realize a sustainable society since my time as the Minister of the Environment. This includes efforts such as spreading the concept of cool biz, which encourages casual business dress to conserve energy in the summer months. And even after becoming the governor of Tokyo, I have continued to promote advanced environmental policies. Examples include having Tokyo become the first local government in Japan to issue green bonds, making the installation of solar panels on newly built homes mandatory, and working for the early commercialization of latest technologies such as next-generation solar cells. And we are also boosting efforts from the perspective of protecting, nurturing, and utilizing greenery, and are promoting Tokyo Green Biz, a greening project that looks 100 years ahead. What is crucial for realizing sustainable cities is innovation. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government is undertaking an initiative to realize sustainable cities through high technology. We call this Sushi Tech Tokyo, short for Sustainable and High Technology. Sushi Tech Tokyo 2024 was held this May, and just in its second year, it has grown into one of Asia's leading events. It welcomed the participation of over 40,000 people from 321 cities of 82 countries and regions around the world. Startups and investors engaged in intense discussions on sustainable cities of the future. Next year, Sushi Tech Tokyo will be held from May 8th to the 10th. So please save the date and join us. We also launched the full operation of Tokyo Innovation Base, where the outcomes of discussions on sustainable cities are put into practice. Events are held there almost every day, and in just less than 1 year since its opening, it has received over 50,000 visitors. TIB will be a global node connecting diverse individuals and will strongly support challenges. Innovation is fueled by the power of finance. Immediately after taking office as governor, I have been working on green bonds, and from this fiscal year, we will upgrade this to Tokyo Green and Blue bonds. We will also issue sustainability bonds in overseas markets. This fiscal year, we plan to issue a total of $800 million of Metropolitan bonds related to sustainable finance. Public-private partnership funds are also an effective way to steer private capital towards sustainable finance. In this fiscal year, Tokyo will be the first local government in Japan to newly establish a fund to promote the transition to a circular economy and the conservation and restoration of biodiversity. We're also building a carbon credit trading system Employing blockchain technology, we will create a system to facilitate not only the domestic but also the overseas purchase of carbon credits by Tokyo's SMEs and others. In addition, we are working to establish Japan's first green hydrogen exchange system with the aim to expand the use of hydrogen energy. As Asia's innovation and financial hub to realize a sustainable world, Tokyo will continue to boldly take on the challenge of finding solutions to social issues. I look forward to the City of London Corporation and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government further deepening partnership and working closely together for a sustainable future. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Governor Koike. Next, we have a video message by Alderman Professor Michael Mainelli, the Right Honorable, the Lord Mayor of the City of London, and he will deliver a keynote speech.
Governor, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Konnichiwa. It is my great pleasure to join you, albeit virtually, for this Green Finance Seminar as part of Japan Week and Tokyo Sustainable Finance Week. And let me say, congratulations, omedetou gozaimasu, to Governor Koike on recently being re-elected for a third term. Having previously served as Minister of the Environment, I know Governor Koike has a deep commitment to nature and sustainability, and I would like to extend my sincere thanks once again for the generous hospitality and friendship she and all the people of Japan showed me during my trip in May. As the 695th Lord Mayor of London, I lead the City of London Corporation, which I affectionately refer to as the world's oldest democratic workers and residents cooperative, and I serve as an international ambassador this year for the UK's thriving professional and financial services sector. Over the course of the year, the role involves over 100 days of foreign travel to strengthen trade and investment relationships. But my trip to Japan has undoubtedly been one of the highlights of this mayoralty. A chance to reaffirm partnerships old and new, see my son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandsons who live in Yokohama, and falling just a matter of weeks before we had the immense honor of hosting His Majesty the Emperor at Guildhall, a much-needed opportunity to brush up on my poor Japanese. This year's mayoral theme, Connect to Prosper, is all about celebrating the City of London's many different areas of expertise, the knowledge miles of the square mile, and leveraging its multifarious connections with others around the globe to find solutions to our planet's biggest challenges, not least climate change and sustainability loss. As Her Majesty's state visit in June showed, the connections that bind Japan and the United Kingdom are some of our most valued. Indeed, you could say that our partnership is effective and reliable as the Shinkansen. Japan was the first country we signed a free trade agreement with when we left the EU, and the new global strategic partnership agreed last year, the Hiroshima Accord, will only deepen that relationship. Moreover, the strong ties between our capitals, bolstered by the Memorandum of Understanding we signed in 2017, are helping the flow of business between Japan and the UK, particularly in asset management and fintech, and paving the way for regular dialogues like today's seminar. Now, I have a fun fact. The quality of joint Japan-UK research is an amazing 4.5 times the world average, a clear indicator that the world needs Japanese and UK solutions. As a recent report from the City of London Corporation, From Commitment to Action, found at least $6 trillion of investment will be required every year if we are to realize our net zero goals. Private finance is essential to find solutions and bridge a considerable portion of the climate gap, 86% according to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Frankly speaking, we can forget about the 14% from the public purse that can always be found elsewhere. But without the contributions of firms in the private sector meeting their share of the equation, our mission is lost. It's why, as one of the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure's largest supporters and donors, the UK has been delighted to see the Japanese private sector's impressive uptake of TNFD recommendations, with over 120 Japanese firms committed to becoming a TNFD adopter, the most of any country. The UK remains the only place in the world to lead in both conventional and green financial center rankings. And as Europe's leading venture capital market, the Square Mile is a one-stop shop for countries and companies looking for capital and expertise to help them meet their sustainability goals. It's a reputation we hope to build on by advocating for innovative transition finance mechanisms like carbon and nature markets, voluntary carbon offtake agreements, specialist insurance markets to underwrite those voluntary deals and guarantee they remove carbon dioxide, sustainability-linked bonds, and sovereign sustainability-linked bonds, all of which we have pioneered from the City of London. And with 13% of global assets under management, despite having less than 1% of the globe's population, the UK can make a huge difference in investing funds into sustainable projects worldwide. We want to continue working with TMG on our shared goals, acting as mutually reinforcing friends and financial centers. There is a wonderful Japanese proverb that translates as, when three people meet, wisdom is exchanged. And by sharing ideas, exchanging wisdom, and ultimately connecting to prosper, I know we can strengthen our already blossoming relationship and together move ahead on our joint mission towards a more sustainable future. Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you very much, the Lord Mayor. We will now continue with the discussion, where today's theme is Trends and Initiatives in Nature Finance in UK and Japan. Please welcome our speakers. Helen Avery, Director of Nature Programs, Green Finance Institute, attending online from UK. And Haraguchi Makoto, TNFD Dedicated SVP, Corporate Sustainability Debt, MS&AD Insurance Group Holdings, Inc., and TNFD Task Force member from Japan. And our moderator is Yamaoka Hiromi, Special Advisor for International Finance, Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Board Member and Chief Sustainability Officer, Future Corporation. Now, Mr. Yamaoka, the stage is yours.
Sorry. Yeah, my name is Hiromi Yamaoka. I'm now working as a Chief Financial Advisor in the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. And at the beginning of the event, I'd like to briefly explain some of the TMG's initiatives in terms of the nature finance. So could you open my slide, please? Yes, thank you. Indeed, Tokyo has a variety of nature with biodiversity. In Tokyo, there are Ogasawara Islands, which were designated as the World Natural Heritage, and also the mountains of over 2,000 meters. In the center of Tokyo, there are many, many green parks like that. And TMG believes that restoring nature is highly important for the well-being of Tokyo citizens, and is taking various initiatives such as nature-based solutions and Tokyo Green Biz. Please turn to slide 2, please. So As a part of those initiatives, the TMG will establish the fund to promote nature finance in this fiscal year. This fund is entitled as the Circular Economy and Nature Positive Promotion Fund, where the TMG itself injects core capital to trigger and to facilitate smooth financing for restoring nature. In addition, last month, the TMG launched the Tokyo NBS Action Award, which will be given to the firms and organizations doing advanced effort regarding nature-based solutions in Tokyo. The TMG will continue to make its maximum effort to develop nature finance and to promote the well-being of Tokyo citizens. And then I'd like to ask the distinguished panelists to give presentations. First, I'd like to ask Helen to give presentations. Helen, please. Please turn the
Good
slide.
evening and good morning. It's lovely to be here and thank you so much for having me. So I thought I would just share with you some of the things that are happening in the UK that we are helping with at the Green Finance Institute in our nature team around this collective ambition that we have globally, because, you know, being signatories to the Global Biodiversity Framework, but also committed to improving biodiversity and reducing biodiversity loss. Around how we are actually going to mobilize private sector finance into helping us with this. We heard from the Lord Mayor that we can't rely on public sector alone. So there are two approaches that we take to this, and I can walk you through them briefly. The first is, how do we get money moving as quickly as we can? We have commitments to move money by 2030 under the Global Biodiversity Framework. So how do we do that? We call this in green finance, financing green, perhaps. So we've called it here financing nature. And there are two ways that we see that we can move money fairly quickly from the private sector. One is through nature markets. So in the UK, for example, we have voluntary nature-based carbon markets. These are woodland carbon and peatland carbon, and several others are under development, like hedgerow carbon. We have many hedgerows here, salt marsh carbon, soil carbon. There are also compliance markets. So here we have biodiversity net gain and nutrient neutrality, and both primarily lean on property developers to offset any degradation that they are making to our environment. And in the case of biodiversity net gain, add another 10%. So it's a net gain. So we have these markets, and we have nature markets framework that the government developed, which is sort of guidelines around how these nature markets should be developed. We also have technical assistance funding to help farmers and land managers put together a business case where they can start to understand which of these markets they could work in to be able to make ecological restoration and get paid for it. And then we have the British Standards Institute standards that are being developed, like umbrella standards, so that all the markets that are being developed are seen as high integrity and have great confidence for buyers. The other models that will help to get money moving out of the door very quickly by the private sector, but actually are less common in the UK, are supply chain and business resilience models. So this is where businesses are working with land managers or perhaps in fisheries to help improve supply chains and transition them to be sustainable and lowering their impact on nature degradation. And business resilience, it's really about businesses understanding that nature-based solutions can be a solution to help them with climate adaptation and mitigation. And then we have what will move the trillions rather than the billions, and that's more of a longer term play, what we call greening finance for nature. And it's the transition to an economy that values and invests in our natural environment. So we heard about the TNFD, and we really see that as a first step, this recognition of nature-related risks, so that companies can start to understand what their impacts and dependencies are and then take action. And to take action, they'll then need transition plans and also what we call nature positive pathways. So these are sectoral pathways so businesses can understand what they need to contribute to any domestic targets or international targets by their sector, and then the necessary actions that they'll need to take. WWF UK has done some great work around nature positive pathways, and along with GFI, we're hoping to move that forward in Q1 next year. And these should hopefully move towards more traditional green finance, so green bonds with nature KPIs, institutional investment from our pension funds. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen, for your wonderful presentation. Then I'd like to ask Haraguchi-san to make presentations. Haraguchi-san, please.
Hi, thank you, Yamako-san. Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Makoto Haraguchi from MS&N Insurance Group Holdings. I'm very honored to have an opportunity to speak today at the Tokyo London Green Finance Seminar. The theme of today's discussion is nature finance, so I'd like to share my views from my position as an insurance company and as a TNFD task force member. Please show the next slide, please. Okay. So the currently a growing interest in the nature positive economy among Japanese companies and financial institutions. In September 2023, TNFD published the first version of its disclosure recommendation and began recruiting companies to adopt them. At the Davos conference in January 2024, 320 early adopters were announced, and 25% of which are headquartered in Japan. As a TNF Council member, I was also surprised by these figures, but this number includes most of the major banks, insurance companies, and asset management companies, and also the 4 regional banks. Since then, TNFD has continued to increase the number of adopters, and as of the end of September, it has increased by 1.4 times. The number of adopters based in Japan has also shown a high rate of growth. Next slide, please. I've been asked by many people why Japanese companies are so interested in this issue. A significant number of UK data providers and nature-related organizations have came to visit me to ask about the Japanese market. I don't have a clear answer, but I can think of a few reasons. One reason for this is that a concept of the foundation of nature expressed by TNFD is in line with Japanese view of nature. As this diagram shows that nature is made of 4 realms: land, ocean, fresh water, and atmosphere. Society lies at the center of the framework, interacting with and across all 4 realms. Members of the society contribute to and are affected by nature laws. This reflects that people are part of nature, not separate from it. The TNFD recommendation draw on authoritative and consensus-based definitions. This diagram, which forms the basis of the understanding of nature, reflects the message of the Das-Gupta review. The economy is embedded in biosphere and is not external to it. Next slide, please. This view of nature was already expressed in the logo for CBD COP10, which was held in Aichi, Japan in 2010. The sense that we are part of nature is something that all Japanese people share. And in this respect, the approach recommended by TNFD is relatively easy to understand for us. Companies that have been involved with TNFD from an early stage have also given positive feedback, saying that it is an appropriate way to express a company's sustainability actions in a holistic manner. Until now, they felt that there were limitations to the fact that the company's sustainability actions were being compared by investors based solely on GHG emissions. Next slide, please. World Economic Forum reported that over half of the world's total GDP is moderately highly dependent on the flow of ecosystem services from nature. So this indicates that the future cash flows of business also depend on the flow of ecosystem service into business. If we continue with business as usual without considering nature-related issues, the loss of nature will accelerate, and we will ultimately be unable to meet the expectation of investors. MS&AD has already started dialogue with the companies we invest in on issues related to climate and nature, and we provide appropriate advice on the assessment and response to nature-related risks as well as consulting services where necessary. In addition, in order to reduce the nature-related risks in priority locations, there are limits to what individual companies can do on their own. For this reason, it is necessary to create a system to collective action by multi-stakeholders based on the landscape approach. As an insurance company that operates closely with local communities, MSID has a human network with its customers, including government authorities and regional banks, universities, and NGOs. And it's acting as a catalyst to bring together these stakeholders, set up councils in each region, and start collective action towards nature positive. Together with other financial institutions, MSID aims to create a system that accelerates the flow of funds that have a positive impact natural capital. And as a nature positive catalyst, we will quickly identify nature loss issues in the region and disseminate information. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Haraguchi-san, for your wonderful presentation. And I now understand that the nature finance is quite important and will be the core of future financing. And I'd like to ask a couple of questions. And first to Helen, and I think that, of course, the nature finance are very important financial activities, especially in the future. At the same time, nature finance may have similar challenges as the green finance employed, although it is definitely needed for human beings to survive over the long horizon, of course. Its economic return may not be very visible in the short term. So I understand that you are making a variety of effort to mobilize finance into nature restoration, but how long do you think it will take for this effort to unlock capital into nature restoration? The question to Helen, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think how long it will take will really depend on us collectively. I know that's quite a sort of easy answer to say, but in the page I just shared with you all, I think nature markets, while carbon markets have some of the challenges, they are a mechanism that's already in place and could allow us quite swiftly, if they expand out to include biodiversity co-benefits, to move billions into nature restoration now. And other markets under development also could do the same, as well as some of those supply chain models that I mentioned. The challenge is they do take time to set up. Like when we think about biodiversity net gain in the UK, that took 10 years in the making, and we don't really have that time. We're actually working on a project with UNEP-FI and UND Biofin to actually just share guidebooks on how you get these models up and running so that we can cut that time massively and actually get money out the door as fast as possible. When it comes to actually transitioning the entire economy to one that values and invests in our natural environment, that's going to take longer. And one of the challenges, and we can pick up on this a bit later, that we're seeing is that the business case for companies isn't quite there. Those demand drivers aren't quite there for companies, and we really need businesses to move, because ultimately they'll be the buyers of any credits through nature markets. They'll be essential for supply chain models, and ultimately they are the ones who will be reporting and then transitioning their own businesses to nature positive.
Yeah, thank you very much. To Haraguchi-san, similar question. And what kind of effort do you think important to utilize market mechanisms to mobilize finance into nature restoration? Because you were in the financial industry, you were the expert in the financial market and market mechanisms. So how about your views?
Absolutely. I would provide comments from the position of the insurance company. And when we evaluated our underwritten asset portfolio using the TNFD approach, we found that at present, nature-related risks other than natural disasters are relatively small. The reason for this it's clear that at this stage, most corporate management teams do not see nature-related issues as their corporate risks. So they don't inquire about insurance as a means of transferring risks right now. So with this in mind, we believe that the underwriting function of insurance company will play an increasingly important role in the world as it moves towards a nature positive economy. And on the other hand, in order to prevent and manage profit loss after insuring against natural risk, nature-related risks, it will be essential to have a substantial nature-based solution to provide tangible positive outcomes, such as the collective actions based on the landscape approach that I mentioned earlier.
Very much. And the next question, and there's a variety of factors behind the nature finance, such as the public opinions and understanding of the firms and the capital markets and the political power balance or government support. And what is mostly needed to promote financing for nature restoration at this juncture? There's a question to Helen, please.
I really do think it's demand drivers that are the most important thing right now. Like, how do we get businesses to understand that it is actually a business risk and we can't wait? We carried out some research with the University of Oxford and some other technical research teams earlier this year that showed that nature-based risk could have a huge impact on the economy within the next few years. And one of the reasons that we think it's important is because we're capturing climate risk, but we're not factoring in that nature degradation compounds climate risk. So actually, even if we're capturing climate risk, we're not capturing the full extent because we're not looking at nature risk. So how do we get businesses to understand? I think there are some levers, and I think you can see this clearly in Japan, where you've had such a huge amount of adopters for TNFD. And my understanding was one of those reasons is pressure from the pension fund. We don't have that in the UK. So we're having to think about what other levers do we have? We don't have sort of this very, very large pension fund that can have that influence. So it's about pressure from shareholders and financial institutions pushing on companies to actually start looking at their nature risk and reducing their impact. I think it's going to be about regulation. Voluntary markets can get us so far, but compliance markets really are what we need if we actually want to get sectors to start investing. I've mentioned pension funds before, and the final thing I'd say is we can't underestimate the role of the central bank. Our central bank here has not looked at nature risk, although we worked with them on that report. They're still just very much focused on climate risk. But the influence of a central bank when it comes out and says we are now looking at nature risk can really, really move the needle. So those are some of the collective things I think we can do to start to really push companies much more quickly into investing in nature and reducing their impact on nature.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Same question. What would be the major drivers for nature finance?
Yeah, I think the collaboration with the government is one of the important issues, and TND has a good collaboration with the Japanese government, and that I was invited to be on the several panel by the government. But yeah, I think that another important issue is to fill the mind gaps between the several stakeholders. So now TNFD is beginning to function as a common language in Japanese market, but there are still gaps in the mindset between investors and companies and the government, academia, and NGOs. Over the past 3 years, I've given more than 50 talks and dialogues to promote understanding among these stakeholders, and the gap is gradually being filled, but still the gap is still there.
Thank you very much. And the next question is, yes, regarding the coordination, the cooperation between London and Tokyo. And what can we obtain from the cooperation or coordination between London and Tokyo in terms of nature financing? Could you please share your views on this? Helen, please.
Thank you. I think there's a lot we can learn from each other, actually. I mean, obviously, we're both, Japan is by far away the leader in having the highest number of adopters of TNFD, and the UK is second. So I think there's quite a lot of learning we could share with each other. We have a UK National Consultation Group, as I know Japan does, and we've worked to develop sort of decks for how you might talk to your board about nature, but it's also moving beyond disclosures, because what we hear from businesses is disclosure alone is wonderful, but we're scared to do so unless you tell us then what we need to do. And this is where that nature positive pathways, sectoral pathways piece is so important. And I think that's something that we could collectively work on, and sort of understanding how we can support businesses in actually taking positive actions. I think the other thing is that, you know, we could also share learnings. Some of the funds that you've shared today just sound excellent, and I'm wondering if that's something that we could learn from and import into London. And similarly, some of the nature markets work that we have, I wonder if we could share those learnings back out and see if that would work in a context for Japan. So I think those are the two, and it's really just sort of really learning from each other so that we can speed up our action collectively.
Thank you very much. Haraguchi-san, same question, please.
Yes, I've been inspired by many visits I have received from people in the UK over the past years, and by exchange of ideas. So I don't think that the transition to a nature positive economy is yet on track. So I believe that the UK and Japan, which are both highly interested in this issue, will undoubtedly contribute to the global nature positive movement by continuing to hold opportunity like this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, wonderful discussion, but unfortunately time is running out now. And Helen, could you provide your final remarks now, please? If you have something to, yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think, you know, only in 2018 and 2019 was the TNFD like a twinkle in the eye of its founder, Andrew Mitchell. And look where we are now with almost 500 adopters. So we can move quickly, and we can move more quickly than climate. But I do think that we're under pressure to make sure that we don't keep reinventing the wheel country by country, and working together like we are in this, this gathering that you've brought together today is really where we need to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. Haraguchi-san, please.
Yes, thank you very much for having me today. It was a very interesting discussion for me. And please find me on the LinkedIn and send invitation to me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And from this wonderful discussion, we've learned that the nature finance is quite an important area, and will become more and more important in the future finance activity, and will be the core activity in the financial world, and which is quite important for the future of human beings and Tokyo citizens. Yeah, thank you very much. Please give a big applause to the panelists, please.
This concludes the discussion. Please feel free to relax for a moment while the stage is prepared. Thank you for your patience. We will now move on to the panel discussion. The theme is long-term investing in sustainable funds towards achieving net zero. Let me introduce our panelists and moderator. From Japan, Miyoshi Noriko, Chief Investment Officer, Sumitomo Mitsui DS Asset Management Company Limited. Kobayashi Hiroshi, Executive Officer, Chief Sustainable Investment Officer, and Deputy Head of Investment Division, Nissay Asset Management Corporation. From UK, James Hewitt, Senior Vice President, Investor Relations, Next Energy Capital. Chris Dotwell, Global Head of Policy and Advocacy, Co-Head Sustainability Center, Impact Asset Management. And our moderator for this session is Jack Knight, Deputy CEO, the Investment Association.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good morning to everybody. It's a great privilege to be here today, and thank you to the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and City of London, their partnership in putting on these very important conversations and events. We're going to do things a tiny bit differently. Do please sit down, panel, and I'll sit down in a moment too. A tiny bit differently. You'll have noticed our experts here who are all at the coalface. That's a term that I hope we're not going to use in future, of financial transition to net zero. And each of them has sustainability somewhere in their job title or in their company name implied, or as a large part of their job. I just wanted to ask them to introduce themselves in the context of that before we come to the presentations, and tell us a tiny bit, keep it quite short please, folks, about how they got into sustainability investment roles within their organizations, and tell us a little bit about them and their expertise. Then we're going to go straight into the presentations from each of the firms, so to speak, and then we're going to have a good conversation after that. So, Chris, I think I'm coming to you first. Please do introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much. So my name is Chris Dodwell. I actually got into this role after spending 20 years working on climate change policy. So I was fortunate enough to work for the UK government as a civil servant for 10 years. And during that time, I ended up working on the international negotiations. And then I was a consultant supporting a number of developing countries bringing together their pledges for the Paris Climate Agreement. And after that, they came to me and they said, how are we going to finance this, Chris? And I realized I didn't understand enough about finance. So for the last 5 years, I've been working at Impacts Asset Management, which is an asset manager that's focused on the transition to a sustainable economy, basically trying to understand that message of how do we finance this transition. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Thank you very much. Noriko, can I ask you to go next, please?
Thank you, Jack. Hi, everyone. My name is Noriko Miyoshi, Chief Investment Officer at Sumitomo Trust Asset Management. I started my career as Global Fixed Income Management and also worked in New York City and came back to Tokyo and now with this firm. So not only I head the team, I'm also a portfolio manager. As a practitioner standpoint, I would like to talk about green bonds and also how we can achieve the net zero. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hiroshi-san.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Hiro Kobayashi, and I'm a Chief Sustainability Investment Officer of Nippon Asset Management. Actually, I built up my career from many things, but my focus always on to alternative investments or private side investments through a time. But I have lots of experience, especially these after being in a current position, current company. I have lots of, very fortunately, I have a lot of, state-of-the-art decarbonized investments through the many interactions with super good managers abroad. So this is the basis, my experience. And then currently, because my wide range of explanation and experience, and as well as relationships with others, and from a practitioner standpoint of view, that could be the basis of myself, and that could be the source of dedication to our company. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And James, please.
Yes, hi everyone. Pleasure to be here and delighted to speak on the panel. My name is James Hewitt. I work in the investor relations team and fundraising team at Next Energy Capital. My role is principally working with institutional investors, raising that capital, which our firm then deploys into solar PV assets and energy storage assets worldwide. I came to the space through a more traditional finance background, working at BlackRock Asset Management. I think there I was working across all investment classes, but it really sparked my interest in infrastructure investing, particularly renewable investing. And it may sound a bit cliche, but it's a real joy to be working in an area of finance where you can generally say that the capital you're deploying is financing that transition to a clean energy future. And that's what I'm really passionate about. So delighted to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, now we've got to get to know everybody. Let's get to know what they do. And I've asked each of the panelists to introduce their own firm's investment strategy for achieving net zero and anything else that they feel is relevant to this conversation. So without further ado, let's go in the same order, please, into the presentations if they're ready. And I think that starts with you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to just tell you a few words about Impacts. So Impacts is a specialist investor, as I was setting out. So we were founded 25 years ago based on the conviction that the transition to a more sustainable economy was going to actually lead to great growth in the companies that could provide the solutions that would take us there. So the founder is still with us, but he grew a business out of that notion. And what we now do is we deploy institutional capital, mostly into long-term investments in equity, some fixed income and some private equity. But we've grown very quickly in the last 4 or 5 years since I joined. So I arrived, there was about 100 people in the firm. We were managing around $15 billion US, and now we're 300, managing about 50 billion. So that demonstrates the interest in investing in this space. So we have about 90 people who are on that investment team. They are out there identifying ideas for themes, thematic strategies, and for investments. And we have offices now in 6 countries. Japan was the penultimate one. We were fortunate enough to be the beneficiaries of a green finance grant from the subsidy program of the Tokyo Metropolitan government. So we're very grateful for them to be here. And we have an office in Tokyo. Our general manager is here today. And we collaborate with BNP as a distribution partner. So we're really interested in Japan as a growth market for this. So I'm just going to say one thing, a little bit about the Sustainability Center that I lead. So everyone at Impacts works on sustainability. I thought that was pretty obvious from what I was saying. But where we're particularly providing support is to the investment process, in advocacy and engagement with companies, in thought leadership, and then in providing advice and reports back to our clients. And I want to say a word or two about policy advocacy. Picking up on the themes that Helen and the earlier panel were discussing, 2 of the specific areas that we're really focused are climate and nature. We see them both as really important. And we also see the idea of whole of government approach to the transition as being really key. So this is not just around disclosures or sustainable financial regulation. This is around achieving real economy change and in having sectoral policies that focus on this. Helen spoke about nature-positive pathways. What we're now really seeing in many countries is sectoral roadmaps that are taking us towards decarbonisation. We and a number of other investors were very passionate just ahead of this year of elections that we really needed to communicate that. And I'm really pleased to see that in Europe and in the UK with the new government there. And hopefully in Japan as well, with the example that Meti is setting, that we're seeing this real focus on how we decarbonize individual sectors. We think that's utterly vital because you'll really get from then a clarification of where the investment opportunities lie, but also then you can really focus on how to remove barriers to investment. And we believe that that can be done most effectively by investors like us getting involved and sort of rolling up their sleeves and helping to co-create solutions with government and with the sector players. I think I'll leave it at that. I'd like to come back a little later, maybe to talk a bit around disclosures and how we can make those more effective, and this question around transition plans, because I have some thoughts on that, but I think that's enough for an introduction.
Thank you. Noriko.
Thank you, Jack. Okay. Thank you for waiting. Okay, I made the introduction, so let's go to the next page, please. So by way of introduction of achieving net zero, I'd like to introduce our company. So we believe that incorporating ESG themes into our research helps us better assess investment risks and uncover alpha opportunities. So we are active portfolio management company. So we have to meet the dual mandates, maximizing clients' assets and also committed to the ESGs. So we integrate ESGs into the investment process. And thirdly, think globally, act locally. I'd like to touch on this later. Please turn the page, please. Okay. You know Sumitomo Mitsui, the both names, so I wouldn't go further on that, but we'd like to commit to the all sustainable investment policies. And materiality of investment management includes climate change and natural capital. Yamaoka-san, Haraguchi-san, and Helen talked about nature. So now I'd like to talk about the net zero. So sustainable investment is the firm-wide level commitment. The climate change is a real threat. Take a look at this. Okay, this is the temperature in Japan. Temperature in Japan is on an upward trend. Indeed, compared to the average temperature from 1991 to 2020, the 2023, last year's average was 1.3 degrees Celsius higher. You know how hot this year was, right? So, of course, net zero journey is challenging and costly. But there's another data. According to the International Energy Agency 2023, about 4.2 trillion US dollars must be invested annually by 2050 to achieve global net zero goals. It's a mind-boggling number. So the green bonds. There are many ways to support transition financing. Here is one of the strong tools. Green bonds have earned citizenship in the fixed income market. They have gained strong demands helped by regulatory support and increased awareness of need for sustainable finance. Then how? So we are an active asset management company. In fixed income arena, we incorporate ESGs in the assessment. We have a process of including our analysts' ESG valuation on the bond issuers' management commitment and ESGs. More specifically, we factor in the issuer's willingness to change to the better, as well as monitoring their risk both individual firm level and industry level. Here again, the willingness and commitment to take action is important. And also, we monitor them once we buy green bonds. Okay, think globally and act locally. How does it mean? This is the chart, GHG emission from our office floors. And the photo is the building we are located in Toranomon. Here, it's a very small step, but while small, it has worked so far. Compared to 4 years ago, we have reduced GHG emissions by 77%. The biggest driver was that we decided to move to GHG conscious building in 2020. Now all the building energy was renewable energy. What have we sacrificed? We can't set AC temperatures easily, meaning that last summer, actually this summer, still summer's going on, we were hot. It was hot after 5. Sorry, but we've seen the outcome. So we've sacrificed, but in exchange, we upgraded the dress code from cool bits to cool t-shirts. So we are still allowed to wear t-shirts at office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noriko. Lovely insights from what you're doing in your own firm. Hira, can we go to you next, please?
Yeah, but on next slide, I hope so. But before that, I missed one comment for my own introduction. But yeah, actually, I was responsible for the analysis or due diligence of impacts fund 4 years ago, and that's an accountant of that. So it's a very, very fancy meeting with him and with this relationship. And actually, we invested. So and it still continues. So it's good for us. But yeah. So next page, please. So I think Jack wants me to shorten the explanation of as short as possible. So I have brief explanation of our firm itself. This asset management is an active investment manager and also strategic partner of strategic asset management arm of Nippon Life Groups, one of the largest insurance company in Japan. So the log shows that is a crucial element for such kind of having that kind of huge asset owners as a mother company. So they not only are big investors for us, but also it's a good partner for us, especially facing with very difficult issues surrounding our own investment, including sustainability issues. So, so with that, I think we have already created some, pilot type of funds who can face with these issues with some other companies. So that's a merit of us to having such kind of huge gap behind us. So that's us. And also our firm is highly asset management, providing high quality asset management services to many areas, including traditional equity bond investment, as well as alternatives. And we are proud of long-term commitment to responsible investment for more than a decade. And as the screen shows, please, next, please. It's a history of our commitment to our ESG investments. As the paper shows, slide shows, we signed PLI 06. And then afterwards, we cultivated ESG investments and in early stages, from the very much early stages at that time, and including introducing ESG ratings to our own investment process from 08. So that means our ESG integration has nearly 15 plus years history for that. So we are very much proud of that. And that shows a commitment, strong commitment of us. So.
Thank you very much, Hiro. James, I don't think you've got slides, but you're going to give us a few minutes on Next Energy. That's great.
Old school, as we say. So Next Energy Capital, as I mentioned, specialist renewable investment manager, focused largely on the solar PV and energy storage sector. Founded in 2007, we have a 16-year track record. So although we're very specialized in our investment focus, we have a long track record of investing. That spans now over 450 solar PV projects that we've invested into across 5 funds. Our firm AUM is $4.5 billion, and we're currently raising $1.5 billion for our latest fund. We now count around over 300 professionals as part of the group worldwide, active both in terms of offices and investments in around 9 countries. Many of you will be familiar with other renewable energy managers out there. So what makes us a bit different? 3 things. People always ask us why solar. Our founders, who founded the company in 2007, had a conviction that to really generate outperformance on your investments, but also your operations, it pays to be a specialist. And that focus is quite unique. That leads into our second one, which is as a lot of focus these days in the business community is around on your mission and your purpose, your corporate purpose. And actually what we have is 300 people all driving in the same direction to achieve our mission of driving that transition to a clean energy future. And then thirdly, we're structured a little bit differently to some of the other asset managers you might work with. We have an early stage development platform. We then have our investment business, and then all our projects are managed in-house by our asset operations team. And with that, we structure a kind of vertically integrated business model as opposed to just a pure play financial investor. All of those makes us a little bit different, but like many of my panelists today, we have climate and impact at our core. Obviously, all our investments generate renewable electricity, so environment, climate impact, whichever label you choose, is at the core of what we do. But we go a little bit further. We are stewards of the land that we have our investments on, and with that comes a huge opportunity around future nature-based solutions, biodiversity, and the net gain that we can achieve by being conscious stewards of that land. And then we try and do things a little bit differently, and an example of that would be we donate 5% of our group profits into a charitable foundation. That foundation looks to invest in causes both close to home, linked to our business activities, such as alleviating fuel poverty, but also a bit further abroad, establishing kind of solar panels and microgrids in parts of sub-Saharan Africa in more rural and remote communities. So with that, sustainable finance, climate is very much at our DNA, and we're in a huge growth period for the solar industry. We represent investors both from the UK and Japan, but also globally, helping to put their capital to work in kind of real physical assets, which are helping to lead that transition to a clean energy future.
Great, thank you, James, and thank you to all the panelists for their presentations. Some really nice stories emerging already. We're going to now have the discussion. It'll take sort of three parts. We're going to talk about the overall regulatory and policy environment that's affecting the work that our panelists do, the financial markets, and the changes within that environment that we experience. Then we're going to narrow down more into asset management and talk about what the opportunities are to satisfy our clients' needs and solve the problems that we've been talking about this afternoon. And then we're going to talk more about what the other panel was talking about in terms of what we can do together in the UK and in Japan, working in collaboration to learn from each other and overcome the problems and explore the opportunities together. So with that, I'm going to come to Hiro first to ask what his reaction to the current policy environment and initiatives of the Japanese government and authorities are of their promotion of net zero goals. So Hiro.
Yeah, talking about, so probably let me start from my observation toward the current government policy briefly. And I think Japanese government has been frequently communicating with the Japanese overall industries for a long time and create the idea of building a way to create net zero societies, truly net zero society in Japan, and make it the basis of the future growth of our nations. So, and with that, there are lots of outcomes recently, and under this green transformation strategies, which we all know, and the stage has gone and yes, has been set in motion right now. So this is the stage we are right now. And because of the GX, Green Transformation Acceleration Agency's strong commitments, for example, they read lots of continuous issuance of newly made transition bonds, for example. So the issue is, where is this consideration goes to? And how the usage of this capital to this issuance. And government also already mapped out specific strategic pathways especially for 16 priority areas they pointed out. And with that, the fund will be invested in line with this strategy. So I think it's very granular strategies, and there are lots of explanatory on it. So I recommend all people read through this, and that's one of the basis of this current policy. And I think it's, especially from the practitioner's standpoint view, it's a good guidance for us. So that's my view on that. And adding to that, our reaction, how should be a private side reaction to that? So generally speaking, probably the reality is we will face with very difficult, challenging transition period right now. So literally speaking, we need more clean power generations furthermore. So probably we need to face with lots of investment opportunities, relatively bigger opportunities, surrounding renewable, distribution network, distribution network developments, as well as large-scale floating wind power generations in many locations. So those kind of concrete events will happen from now on. So we need some cohesion. We need creative cohesion of investors from lending side as well as equity investment side. So that's a big challenge for us. And as an asset managers, we need to make this plausible enough to attract many people. So that's a current observation of myself.
Thank you, Hiro. James, in the UK, we've got a new government. We've got a whole load of new regulation on sustainable funds. So no shortage of government and regulatory initiatives in the pipeline and in process. How do you feel that they are influencing the markets and what you do towards net zero?
Yeah, thank you, Jack. In the investment community, I think the golden words are stability and long-termism, which have not always been the words we've associated with UK politics in recent years. So always a bit of nervous laughter there. But I think, as you alluded to, the new government we've seen put in place have been making a lot of positive noises with regards to the renewable energy industry. We've seen the creation of GB Energy, and a manifesto come out to make Britain a clean energy superpower. Although we're relatively light on detail at the moment, that trend of direction and those headlines are really positive. Even going back a couple of years, the UK government created something called the UK Infrastructure Bank that had a twin mandate of boosting domestic infrastructure in the UK as well as meeting net zero goals. We've been fortunate enough to work with them. They invested or anchored our UK solar fund with 250 million of commitments, helping to catalyse and stimulate investment into the UK solar industry. That's been really powerful. That the idea there was to also attract in foreign investment, and we've been fortunate enough in that fund to also be supported by Japanese LPs. And that's an example of where we've been proactively working with the government hand in hand in a really successful way. Some of the other initiatives are around the contracts for difference mechanism that's available in the UK. The idea there is we've moved away from government subsidies, but stabilizing power prices, both for generators and consumers, is of importance. I think the geopolitical developments in Europe have really shone a light on that and the importance of energy security. And I think the UK government has really led the way in terms of that contracts for difference mechanism and what that can bring. So just a couple of ideas there, but it's been a really powerful leader, I think, in that green energy space, and the UK continues to be at the forefront.
Thank you, James. Well, our hosts have actually been kind enough to spare our blushes by changing their own Prime Minister and calling their own election. I guess there must be election FOMO in 2024. But Noriko, perhaps you could tell us about how here in Japan those regulatory and policymaker initiatives are affecting the financial markets participants in terms of the promoting net zero goals.
Thank you, Jack. I think we have to move together, and because it's an interconnected society, governments, private sectors, and individuals all need to work together. So I think the encouragement from the Tokyo Metropolitan government and the City of London are very inspiring and with lots of motivatives. Speaking of City of London, congestion charge is now applied. So you have to pay an extra to taxi. So I'm not sure if I would be glad if Tokyo Metropolitan Government does so, but NIMBY doesn't work, not in my backyard. Concept will not work any further or anymore. We've shared the temperature of Japan. Compared to 50 years ago in 1970, the temperature of Japan is 2.5 degrees almost higher. So 50 years from now, if the climate change keeps going, probably all the seasons we have to bear the temperature, outside temperature, higher than the body temperature. I don't think it will work. So we have to move together. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, do you mind covering that point as well, please?
Yeah, so I guess what I was thinking, back to when I was working on this from a civil servant, there was a lot of discussion around carbon markets and around the importance of carbon pricing and how could we have shared experience of that. So it's really sort of encouraging to know that that is still moving forward with the Tokyo Metropolitan Council. The UK has continued to sort of have carbon pricing at the kind of at the heart of what it does. But what I think we've realized is that we need to actually go beyond that to look at those tailored solutions for individual sectors. And one of the things throughout this year of elections has been kind of, we come back to the idea that actually you have to electrify everything, you have to decarbonize grids. So that carbon pricing mechanism has actually helped in the UK to really boost renewables, but also you needed the risk reduction measures that James was talking about. And I think one of the main things that we're really pleased to be seeing at the heart of the new Labour government is a focus on planning and the understanding that actually what we need to do is to not to allow, to respect the views of local residents, but also to recognise when sometimes you have to do things in the greater good. So I think to balance that out and to really achieve that kind of planning process. With the clean energy mission, we've also got the National Energy System Operator is actually looking at what the grid is going to need to look like to be future-proofed. And I think that is something that we're seeing is happening in the US, it's happening in Europe, this idea of investment in the grid. Unfortunately, there's actually some great companies that you can invest in who are going to be providing the supplies to that grid, cable manufacturers, the guys that are in the value chain for this clean energy revolution. So I do think that we'll see those things moving forward, the planning idea, some specific policies to get things going in other sectors. I think one of the things that we've all got to recognize as well, though, is that you have to take local communities with you. A lot of these decisions around decarbonisation are actually based on individuals' decisions about what car they buy, decisions about on how they retrofit their houses or what appliances they buy. So we've got to make this exciting and make this a transition that actually individuals and people jobs will be attached to it. So there's that growth message has also got to be at the heart of that. And again, it's really good to see the way that the new government in the UK is taking that to heart. So just a few thoughts there. And,
yeah, lovely. Yeah. A great segue to the next question, which is about turning those challenges into opportunities. And where do you see the opportunities between the UK and Japan for asset management firms specializing in green finance products and transition? And perhaps, Chris, I could start you off on that question.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that has really moved on over the last 5 years is the sophistication of the discussion around what disclosures look like and what corporate action looks like. So when I started off at Impax, we were just getting into UK implementation of the TCFD recommendations. Now we're talking about TNFD, but actually we're still getting better at what we were doing on climate. But in that first rush, there was a big focus on financed emissions and getting asset managers to understand the emissions of all of the companies that they were emitting. So I took part in something called the Climate Financial Risk Forum that was set up by the Bank of England and the FCA. And we started looking at, well, what are the right metrics to be reporting? And we actually looked around and we discovered there was something like 80 different metrics that people were using in this area. So we said, well, we'll have to make this clearer. So we came up with the idea of a disclosures dashboard that looked at 5 different use cases, and they were physical risk, transition risk, decarbonization of your financed emissions, but actually, crucially, investment in climate solutions, investment in the transition, and engagement. So how much were companies doing? And based on those 5 metrics, the conclusion we reached were that whilst financed emissions needed to come down, it was very hard to do that yourself. You can't pull a lever apart from just selling your high carbon stocks, and then that will probably just lead to someone else buying it. So it was much more important to focus on the levers that we could pull. And now that thinking has evolved into what's now in the Transition Plan Task Force, which has now been rolled into IFRS and ISSB. So the idea that actually as asset managers, we should be thinking not only about how we keep the emissions of the companies we invest in low, but also how do we do that in a way that takes advantage of opportunities by investing in the climate solutions of the future, but also using that engagement lever. So the TPT framework, the Transition Plan Task Force framework, is something that actually I was just talking to the FSA about earlier today, because they were asking the same question. So how can we sort of learn from UK experience, and what should Japan be doing around climate disclosures? So I think there's a great scope for learning and transfer of knowledge in that area.
Great, thank you. Hira, where does NISE see the opportunities for itself and its clients?
Yes. Yeah. Before that, it's a great comment from Chris, and yeah, actually, as I mentioned about the potential opportunities that happen here in Japan, but again, because of governments show the way to us, so next stage should be a private side, and how private side investment will follow this guidance set by governments. So this is very important things. So I would like to Chris your opinion. So probably so we did convert with this issue quite much, but we need to learn much from the other countries' example. What the successful experience, well, the other country have done before so far. Simply, we have shown lots of developments in many areas globally. So we need to learn more about that. So hopefully we can get some opinions from him. So that's first things. So, and before that, so as for the Jack's question, yeah, probably we are very much interesting opportunity set in public-private areas as well. So by we can introduce the contents of the fund itself, but it's not the place to be. But so instead, I have my own experience to talk with our equity analyst surrounding myself, and it should be a very indicative experience for me. And occasionally, throughout the actually our equity analyst team is just focusing on good skill sets, on very good skill sets within Japanese companies who could be the good driver on key elements for the good elements for the decarbonization process of hard-to-abate sector industry. So even it's small, large firms, but they could have very unique strategies to do that. But unfortunately, the company itself, don't know the intrinsic value of the skill sets. So that's the point of we are discussing, and our analyst is hovering around in this market. And they happen to speak with the huge European manufacturing companies recently, and they talked about, okay, our company is looking for the good skill sets, and one of the Japanese very thought after fine-tuning devices. They are pretty much interested right now, and they would like to adopt those kind of technologies by themselves. So and coincidentally, our analyst is searching for this, talking about this specific strategies coincidentally. So that's a good experience for ourselves overall. And that could be a good connection with, there are lots of hidden technologies in Japan. So, and make them, and unfortunately, Japanese people is humble enough to say openly about, okay, this is good strategy or something. But someone has to find out this technology, and expand the potentials furthermore to not only Japan, but also to abroad. So this is the process. It deserves to think about sincerely. So there are lots of ways to express those kind of things. So someone can invest, so we can provide as in the shape of a public equity portion, or could be a private funds type of investments. So in everything, but that's the source of opportunity sets, and it could be related to the London-Tokyo relationship furthermore. So that's what we are seeking for right now.
Thank you very much. Noriko, on the opportunities, where do you see them, and Sumitomo Mitsui DS?
Thank you. Opportunities are in the companies or issuers who are going to change the commitment from the low commitment to change a little bit higher, because that's where the active managers like. Because all straight A students or straight A companies have already applied the whatever they can, but there are the group who are reluctant to move on because it's costly, and you can't tell when the achievement or goal would be. But it's not 1 or 0. So we like to give the a time for developing company and the countries who are suffering from some natural disasters or the energy shortage. So the message I would go back to you, Jack, is that respond to you is that give time for some investors, and give compliments if they signal the way of change of their management style. We should compliment them by investing in their first green bonds. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Great, great. James, you've already touched on the opportunities. So I thought, as time is running fast out, I could just move you on to the final question about where you see collaboration and opportunities between the UK and Japan. What are our strengths that we can build on? What can we learn from each other? And what about the best ways to engage with government, industry, and asset managers to achieve the goals we want to see?
Yes, definitely. I think first and foremost, as a renewable energy manager, what we're trying to do is bring attractive investment opportunities to Japanese institutions. It's really important that we deliver on the financial performance of that to help them meet their objectives. And the second order is clearly helping Japanese investors meet net zero targets. Every time I come back to Tokyo, there are more investors with dedicated impact-focused investment strategies, dedicated renewable investment strategies, and I think that's been a clear change, and the Japanese investment community is becoming incredibly sophisticated in that area. I think the second part of that question is when we accept the capital from the Japanese investment institutions, it's not about being a passive investor in our funds. It's about that knowledge transfer and that opportunity to learn from each other. The Japanese renewable energy market is very developed, and increasingly we've seen investors come to the UK to learn about the offshore wind sector, about the energy storage sector, and what we're doing at the front there. bringing that knowledge and that experience back to Japan to deploy in the home market. And I think that's been really powerful. We've taken a number of Japanese investors around site visits of some of our assets in the UK, and that's been a fantastic way to exchange ideas, exchange knowledge, and bring that back. So I think we've already been able to do a lot in terms of the UK and Japanese collaboration, but I'm really excited for what's going to happen over the next few years.
Great, thank you, James. I think we're just getting to the end of our time here. So, Chris, if we can give sort of 15 seconds each to the final three for last word.
Fantastic. I've got two ideas. So the first one is I think that with the sign up from TNFD, as we were hearing earlier on from Japanese investments and companies, I think the UK has a lot we could learn on that front. I think it'd be really interesting to see how that moves forward. The second one is I would really advocate for having issue-specific forums where you engage between government and investors and others. So, you know, things like the Climate Financial Risk Forum, the UK had a net zero council under the last government, yet to see how that carries on, but also on a sectoral basis. It'd be really good to have those, as well as other traditional fora like the Keidan Ren and other things, but just to get those groupings together on productive areas.
Hiro.
Yeah, pretty much the same as Chris mentioned, but especially for Japanese investors, as an investment managers, we can utilize lots of relationships further on. So we can walk around many stakeholders and talking about many things, and there could be hard negotiation, but we give them lots of ideas and make it, the cohesion of the investors as soon as possible. So by occasionally by explaining, by deep explanation, by documentation materials, or it could be a structuring for the various kind of investors. So that's asset managers should do from now on.
And Noriko, a few words, please.
Thank you. I think this opportunity, the panel discussion and the Tokyo-London seminar tells itself. We can together move the world better. And I also, my own favorite Fortnum Mason tea. And I hope we can come back and forth together, each other, and discuss the difference, and also consider and suggest some good ideas or new emerging market for the reduction of the GHG emission to net zero. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, it seems we didn't need to have a final question, because the panel was an object lesson in the benefits of collaboration and exchanging views and showing the strengths of our expertise in this area. So with that, I'd love to thank our excellent panelists today with a round of applause, and hand over to the ambassador.
This concludes our panel discussion. Thank you very much, speakers. Now, please relax for a moment while the stage is prepared. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to invite Julia Longbottom, British Ambassador to Japan, to the stage for some closing remarks. Ambassador, the stage is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm delighted that the British Embassy in Tokyo has partnered again with Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the City of London Corporation to support this 7th edition of the Tokyo-London Green Finance Seminar 2024. This joint event started in 2018, soon after signing a memorandum of understanding between Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the City of London. I'm so glad to see that the annual seminar continues to flourish. As you've all heard from the panel sessions today, green finance particularly today's themes of transition finance and nature finance, has never been more important. In the UK, in July of this year, Prime Minister Starmer was elected, bringing the Labour Party back into government after 14 years. While the new government is clear that there's much that needs to change in the UK, as set out in its 5 missions of growth, clean energy, safer streets, opportunities for all, and rebuilding the NHS, it's also a government determined to provide stability and continuity. The UK's commitment to leadership on climate change is one example of continuity coupled with ambition, as we've just heard. The mission here is to become a clean energy superpower by accelerating the rollout of green energy and our path to net zero. The government is determined that the 2 missions of green transition and economic growth should go hand in hand. Getting to net zero and achieving our environmental targets is not just essential to tackling climate change and biodiversity loss, it's also a huge growth opportunity for both the UK and Japan. And as you've been hearing today, green finance is the key enabler to deliver both growth and transition. Reflecting that, our Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, used his first foreign policy speech at Kew Gardens in London, or just outside London, to set out the UK's commitment to unlocking global finance on larger scale so we can back ambitious plans from those moving away from fossil fuels, not just in the UK and Japan, but globally. Indeed, green finance has driven profound changes in the UK. Only 2 days ago, the UK closed its last coal-fired power plant, ending over 140 years of coal-powered electricity generation in the United Kingdom. This is a historic moment. The UK was the first country in the world to generate electricity from coal, and is now the first G7 country to close all of its coal-fired power stations. In 1990, coal provided an astonishing 80% of UK power. In 2012, 40% of UK electricity still came from coal. Now it's close to zero. That clean energy revolution can be told through the UK's story of dramatic renewables growth, from 7% of our electricity in 2010 to over 50% in the first quarter of this year. And that dramatic transition has been enabled by investment, including substantial Japanese investment in our offshore wind. This example shows the real-world transformative impact green finance can have, transforming our economies and driving the transitions and growth that we all need. As 2 global financial centres, as public investors, and as multilateral financial actors, the UK and Japan can wield an outsized role in driving this important transition and in seizing the benefits. So it's all the more encouraging to see the UK's green finance partnerships with Japan strengthen further through our policy exchange, commercial relationships, and our joint thought leadership. Together, the UK and Japan are setting global standards and leadership on green finance, designing the incentives and institutions to enable a swifter global transition and delivering more sustainable global growth. We're working together to mobilize more finance from the private sector, including financial institutions, to bridge the finance gap for nature too. So finally, thank you all of today's speakers and panel members for continuing to move our discussions forward. Thank you as well to the City of London Corporation and to the Tokyo Metropolitan Government for collaborating to organise this event. Whether you've joined today online or in the venue, thank you too for your participation. I look forward to further discussions on how we can work together to both tackle climate change, accelerate our transition to net zero, and to drive economic growth. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, this concludes all sessions of the Tokyo-London Green Finance Seminar 2024. Thank you very much indeed for spending this time with us.